Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with Season 6, Episode 43 of our weekly P&Q&C&A&T, which is a glorified version of a Q&A, of which the most important letters are the Q and the A, which is questions and answers, and the P, which is stands for podcasts and Patreon, because it exists in podcast format if you check the links in the description of the video on all the major podcasting platforms, and it is largely due to the support of our patrons that we were able to do things like that. Getting right into it, I'd like to say sorry for last week. The reason why we weren't able to film a video is at 11 a.m. the day after, and we do normally film like right at the night of,
right.
And post, the same night. I had a neuroanatomy final sort of assessment worth 25% of my mark,
Right.
and so I was busy studying for that instead.
So we could prioritize a video that makes us about $1 each time we do it. It takes about an hour of our time, or we could prioritize our real life stuff. And I think
that's with 25% in my neuroanatomy class, which is not insignificant.
So, but in compensation for that, well, last week I did the MP video by myself, but this week I think we've got a lot more juicy content on injustice. So we've got questions left over from last week, questions from this week, and a lot of it is actually injustice.
Yeah, but to start out, we'll talk about something that is not injustice. This one comes from Apocalypse, and they say, what do you think of the FTC's revision of COPPA, COPPA, and its effect on you and other content creators of YouTube? Do you think YouTube will die before injustice?
And they gave us Apocalypse gave us the context by linking to J House Law's video about COPPA.
Yeah. And I haven't watched this video, you have. So
did.
I will serve for this the role of the uninformed public.
You'll be my straight man.
Yeah.
So I guess the short answer is I don't think YouTube will die, but a more interesting question then, and maybe that's what you meant, was will it hurt a lot of YouTubers and make it not as robust a platform?
Yeah.
So a quick recap for those not watching the video. FTC, also known as the Federal, this is all American, FTC, known as the Federal Trade Commission, is beefing up COPPA, which is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And so basically any content that's targeted to children was subject to this, and they've changed from stuff that's targeting children to content that's attractive to children. And you have to self-designate, and clearly attractive to children is much more broad, and it means a lot of people will fall into that net.
And I feel like most of the stuff on YouTube is meant to be attractive to children on some level.
Yeah,
I mean, the platform itself is sort of attractive to children.
Right. Absolutely. And especially since parents are happy to give their devices to their kids to keep them entertained.
Yeah.
While they want, or in other words, it's the olden days they used to tell kids better to be seen and not heard, send them off to do something else. Mm-hmm. So once a video is designated, the reason why that matters is if it's designated as being attractive to children, you don't get personalized ads anymore. You only get contextual ads.
Yeah.
And the difference is, I guess it was implied, I don't know if he actually said it in the video, but that personalized ads, which are geared to the viewer and the viewing history, are more valuable or are worth more money than contextualized ads, which are geared towards the content in the video.
Yeah, because basically the idea is that if you've got a personalized ad, you have a bunch of data points about somebody's sort of watch patterns, right? And you give them advertisements that are effective based off of their watch patterns. And if you have a contextual ad, it is basically the same thing except with only one data point instead of sort of like a rich set of information.
Okay. So side point is that when I was young, I used to think it was only pronounced advertisements. Then I had a teacher that pronounced it advertisements, and it took me a few years before I realized that both were acceptable pronunciations.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. It's just interesting. It's just that you picked up on that, or maybe it's just the way you've grown up, your exposures, that to you that's actually a natural way of saying it. It felt not right to me, but maybe it's because I spent more time reading, and I don't think I actually heard the word before I'd seen it in print.
Wait, did I say advertisement?
Yes, you did.
That's weird because that's not how I say it.
Or maybe I'm wrong. I know it was one way. It just made me think of that. Did you say advertisements?
I think I did.
Okay.
We
have to go back to the tape to find out.
Yeah.
And the other part is it's a fine for not complying is $42,000 per video.
Yeah. And I think the thing that's interesting about this is that the extent to which it will affect content depends, I think, pretty heavily on how marketable the stuff talked about in the video is, right? It's definitely going to be worth less no matter what if you have to, go from, personalized to contextual. But for some stuff, it is already, there's some intrinsic sales. So you talk about, I think he was supposed to be the highest paid YouTuber in
Who?
2018 or 2019, Ryan's World,
Okay.
which is a kids toy review channel.
Right.
Those ads don't need to be personalized. It's
Right.
a child watching a toy channel. You give them advertisements for toys, and it is basically as valuable, matter what kid is sitting in front of the screen.
Yes and no. So the actual value to the advertiser is just the same, but will they have to pay as much?
Yeah.
So they're clearly selling the ads differently, right? So that when you get a personalized ad, they can charge more for it, even if it reaches the same audience, even if it reaches the same person, because it is supposed to be more accurate in targeting the audience.
Yeah, the idea is that you have more information, so you're hopefully only putting ads on things that are much more specifically related to the kind of target demographic that you're marketing to. But to differing extents, there's some videos that have inherent audiences built in that have inherent preferences. So a toy channel, right? Even a gaming channel to a lesser extent. You sell them video games, right?
Right.
And you're probably selling them video games either way. And, they might get other ads that aren't video games sometimes, right? But there is a sort of inherent understanding of what what a good type of ad that you could put on a video is. But then you run into issues where, obviously this is not a great example of something that would apply to kids, but like a political channel, for example. There's not a product inherent that you're selling that person, right?
Yeah. I mean, the problem... Okay, so...
Variety content, right? If somebody's a vlogger, right? They might have content geared towards kids. There's no sort of inherent marketing...
But
there's no inherent product that should be marketed to people who watch vlogs, right? They're not a homogeneous population in terms of their spending habits.
But I think we're demonstrating the actual problem with this, right? Because you use the word geared towards kids. And the idea, actually, the reason why it's become dangerous is because it's anything that's attractive to kids.
That's true. Political content is also likely not attractive to kids.
Well, but I think this is where the real danger is, because political content, what it takes is a bad faith actor.
Yeah.
Right? To use this particular legislation to try to stifle the kind of speech they don't want, pick on some superficial quality in the video. That, let's say it's even something like, there's some political YouTubers that do what's that, the animation that's not really animation?
Oh,
where they just use a lot of pictures, something like that, where they just
or
use
like slideshow animation.
Yeah, exactly. And then they can use the threat of $42,000 fines per video, to get them to stop putting out videos, or maybe not stop, but change the setting on their channel so that it's all attractive to kids.
Yeah.
Then their advertisers all become contextual, and then they're less valuable. And ultimately, I don't know what algorithm they'll use, but if it's contextual, and this now is a video that's geared towards kids,
then
they're going to have kids ads on those videos that were never meant to be seen by kids.
It's true. I don't know how that works. And the thing about it is that when you talk about content that is attractive towards kids, that is such like a weird thing. Because a lot of the time, content that is attractive towards kids and content that is geared towards kids are entirely different things. Right. I think there's a pretty common experience on YouTube when you reach a certain age, maybe, like 12, something like that, where you might be seeking out stuff that is specifically... probably largely watched by children, but not necessarily appropriate for children.
Right.
Right? So you talk about channels like PewDiePie, channels like Smosh, when Smosh was popular. One of the things is, I was young. I never watched Smosh because I was either too young, or like the content was genuinely too inappropriate for me. And then I think by the time I was like, I can probably watch this, I no longer found it entertaining, right? Where the content is, but even something...
Well, part of the appeal is that it is sort of forbidden.
Yeah. And so the sort of interesting thing about that is that, even if it ends up with a certain younger viewer base, right? It's, not even what's attractive towards kids is really sort of nebulous, right? Mm-hmm. Because, our, again, gaming content, right? The stuff that we make, it's a mobile game. That's very easily accessible to kids. Right? And I think audiences for mobile games do tend to skew younger. Is that attractive to kids? Probably.
So-
Does it count? I don't know.
So maybe this is a discussion that we actually need to have. And it's not like we prepared this, but so would it be better to make all our to mark all our content as being attractive to kids? So then we will never run afoul of the law. I mean, we'd make less money, but we're not making that much anyways. I mean, just put it out there. It's like $40 US a month
And
on all our videos.
they couldn't
Like,
fine us.
well,
Could they?
I guess they could.
Effectively? How would their collection go?
Um,
What would that process look like?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about law to be able to say. Are there potential consequences? I'm sure there could be. If they were to fine us, and then like how some criminals can't go into the U.S. anymore because there's some sort of outstanding warrant for their arrest.
Yeah, if we would owe $48,000.
Per video. I guess if I never cared about going to the U.S. again, then it probably wouldn't matter.
That's true, but it's in my name though, so I think I would be responsible.
Because it is your channel.
And I have a longer life ahead of me to not be able to visit the U.S.
So maybe that's something that we have to have a longer discussion about. But this is what the idea brings up, right?
Yeah, because it's everything. All of YouTube. There's so little of YouTube that you could not argue is meant to, appeal to minors.
Right.
Right. There's sort of small spaces within it. I think the video essay community is safe.
I'm not even sure about that. Again, if you use what did you call it, the animatics?
Yeah.
That the idea of it's like the way they used to prosecute comic book creators. They would prosecute comic books that had adult content but were clearly geared towards adults by saying, well, it's comic books. That's attractive to all kids.
Yeah.
And so they were subject to the indecency laws. I mean, that's a big part of how the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund became prominent in defending people who were being sued, I guess.
Yeah.
Or prosecuted for breaking the law.
I think one of the things that is likely to happen with something like this is that it is very likely that I think the reason why it's scary is because it's not well defined, right? And it's so broad and vague. And I think what is likely to happen as with these things frequently, the system like this, it feels so broad as to almost be not sustainable. So one of two things will happen: either massive portions of people, especially people who probably didn't need to, will have to designate their channels like this, and we'll see what happens to ads, and we'll see what happens to content creators, and maybe YouTube takes another hit like it has with the adpocalypse, with different automatic moderation tools, all that stuff, right? And maybe that happens, and maybe this gets either tossed out or refined or figured out in a way that makes where that uncertainty that we have right now resolves into something that is not as bad as what the worst case scenario is, which is sort of what we're talking about here, right?
But it might take a few people to suffer before that happens. I mean, we saw an example of that when people were being sued for downloading MP3s.
That's true.
So there were grandmothers that were being sued for thousands of dollars because their grandchild had downloaded an MP3 on their computer or even their network, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we'll have to watch it, I think, is the thing.
Right.
And again, Greg, it's interesting with YouTube existing and operating out of the US, right?
Right.
But I don't know how that applies to, for example, us. Like what happens? There's obviously legal precedent that the content from your users you're not directly responsible for, you're not legally liable for. That is why YouTube is allowed to exist, right? Basically
safe harbor.
Basically any
I think it's a safe harbor exception to the DMCA that allows them to say that, well, when you bring it to our attention, that we do something about it. But if we're just a platform, if we don't know about it, we can't actually do anything about it, and there's just too much content for us to police.
So we'll have to watch and see. I really think I fingers crossed that it is not just another sort of nail in the coffin of YouTube.
Right. Well, I guess personally, the only thing I've got I feel like is gonna protect us is there's gonna be thousands of Minecraft channels that are gonna be subject to being attacked before us. Because Minecraft is more attractive, I think, to kids than Injustice.
It really depends on how automatic the moderation tools are. Because if we're looking at the law as written, it could just apply to any gaming content, all gaming content, and then it would just hit us, and then that's it.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be YouTube policing it. I think it would have to be, because YouTube is asking us to designate our videos, and we're required to do it by this month, I think. So it'll be a matter of people, or maybe bots, like what do they call them? Just programs to check YouTube and look through all the videos and see if.
I don't even know how they would do that though. It's so broad.
At 42,000, it would pay to pay somebody, and if they only caught one video a year, it would still be worth it to them.
Yeah, but the fine, that's from the government, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're saying you think the government could hire a team of people, of YouTube content moderators, of content that is potentially geared for children that hasn't been flagged?
Well, look at the civil forfeiture laws in the States, where anything that's considered the proceeds of a crime, but also that anything for somebody who's been arrested is subject to forfeiture, so that when people are caught speeding in a certain state, they can take their car, so that there's motivation for the police to target expensive cars and seize them and then sell them off and make money for them and generate income for the police department.
That's horrifying, and and also a good point.
Yeah. But
okay.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that to our attention, Apocalypse, because I've been ignoring all the messages from YouTube saying that we needed to mark off our videos until I saw this comment. And it's definitely more food for thought that we might be coming back to.
Yeah, it's so hard for me to say because I don't know if our videos are attractive to kids.
Yeah.
And I don't really, I sort of want to be able to plead ignorance on this because I think that they're, by and large, not built to be.
Right.
I think the style of our content, actually, if anything, as gaming content, is sort of obtuse for children.
I hope so.
But it's really hard to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Our next question, injustice related, comes from Strice, Strys.
Yeah, Stries. Was it like Stries like fries?
Like fries, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And they say, also, would you recommend either doing bonus battle 6 or challenge reset when grinding for credits?
Easy question. I like these. Short and sweet. Bonus battle 6 if you also need experience to level up your guys, and challenge if you only want power credits. Challenge is clearly faster. You can do it with all your characters and lower levels. And bonus battle 6 has to be guys that are high enough. And for most people who are grinding for credits, bonus battle 6 makes the most sense, because if you're short on stuff, chances are you want to level up your guys too, so you can create more people, or create more teams that'll let you grind.
Mm-hmm. So there we go.
Yeah, but the experience on challenge sucks because the levels are so low.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, our next question comes from Sly Snipes, and this is a follow-up to the previous question where he asked if we were gay or just roommates or something.
Yep.
I don't remember the exact phrasing, but that was the approximate message content. And he says, or I should say, they say, I don't think gender is signified here. Hello again. Firstly, I'm sorry if my last question came across as intrusive or mean in any sort of way, but I had been watching for a while and I was genuinely curious. Genuinely curious. Secondly, yes, I do capitalize every. I don't really know why I do it. I just always have. Also, I use caps lock instead of shift, which mean I must be a medical mystery. And thirdly, finally, you guys must be fed up at this point. An actually injustice comment. I always wondered how to get augmentations. I've been playing for around 3 years on and off, and I have no idea how to get them or get a character max augmented. Essay by Sly Snipes. And I think, first off, at the beginning, I don't think we noticed any ill intent. I think we I think it was clear from the way that you're asking, right? I think you said this is not a troll question, right? In the initial question. I think we just used it as a jumping off point to talk about the way that it was being talked about. Right. And I don't think it really had anything to do with us. We weren't trying to crap on you for the way that you phrased it or anything.
No offense taken.
Yeah.
We're all good. Yeah.
And for the other part of it, which is the how to get augmentations.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the only practical way for augmentations to farm them is to do it through Survivor and using last laugh tickets. So you could use the airplane mode. I was going to say air fund. Like I was going to ship the words in my mind. I was just jumping ahead. The airplane mode / refund glitch to try to get the augmentations that you want when you've got last laugh tickets. But augmentations have been available other ways. They've been parts of really specialized packs that are often very expensive and cost a lot of cash. So it's not a good way to accumulate augmentations, but you can get them there. The most important augmentations, the reason why it's worth using the airplane mode glitch isn't necessarily just to get augmentations, but to get the ones that you want. Because not the only ones that matter, but ones that matter the most are crit chance and crit boost.
Mm-hmm.
Because they will make the biggest difference in your ability to win fights in multiplayer, and the boosting the damage and boosting the health. While it's nice aesthetically, what it does is it changes your matchups in a bad way in multiplayer. Oh, and I just wanted to stick it out there just so that it's in the ether somewhere recorded. Okay. You're working on something new right now, right?
Yeah, I am. This is sort of I've mentioned it a couple times when we're talking about a new thing to do. I'm working on a video essay right now, and I have actually put down about 2.5 minutes worth of it in sort of a rough edit. I've got most of the script for it. And
so 2.5 minutes is how much of it? What are we aiming for?
I don't even know what I'm aiming for. It's probably going to be somewhere between like 7 and 10 minutes when I'm done.
Okay, so you're like a quarter of the way through.
Maybe.
Okay.
I ran it by a couple of people just with what I've got to see what people think. I'm probably going to re-record the audio and then re-edit it a little bit closer.
Okay.
Because I had to record it the first time when people were asleep, so I was quiet and it was a little more gravelly than a video essay probably should be, skewing a little closer to the ASMR, as close as you would get. But yeah, so there's still a lot of work to be done on it, but I'm quite enjoying it. I don't really have the time to work on it right now. I'm coming up into final season, but it's been a really sort of fun process so far, for what it is. And what I'm really realizing is for all of my sort of really basic rudimentary editing, with not a ton of, there's not a high sort of standard of quality or eye for detail there, just because I don't know how to edit video properly. And with my, relatively sort of simple conversational script, that it is still taking me probably, I want to say easily upwards of an hour for every minute of content that comes out. Because I would say that for, I've written a bunch. Right? But for the 2.5 minutes that I have, obviously having written most of the script now, that's, some time that went in that isn't coming up to the thing. But when I'm going to re-record my audio, re-edit the video, I want to say I've probably already spent maybe somewhere between 5 and 10 hours on it.
Wow. All right. I can't wait to see the final product.
Yeah. And I mean, to say that makes it, maybe gives people a full sense of how good it's going to be. Because I fully expect it to be rough around the edges. But I think for this, I had an opinion that I thought was maybe worth making a video essay on before, and I didn't follow through with it.
Right.
And I think what's for this is that I just want to release it and see what it is going to be like. And for maybe a sneak preview, I think I can talk about the topic of it here, if anybody's interested. It's going to be on Patriot, the Hassan Minhaj's Netflix show.
Right.
And so no
Isn't it Hassan Minhaj?
Yeah.
Hassan Minhaj?
What did I say? Hassan?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to hit the pronunciation right. So it's probably Hassan, yeah, and then I'm making sure to, because people say, well, Hassan Minhaj, and it's Minhaj, like there's an H there. Okay. And I'm trying to say that without hitting it too hard. That's one of the things that I want to be, careful that I'm being respectful for the purposes of the video essay. So I had to listen to his. He has tried to pronounce it in different places. There was a video where he went on Ellen and pronounced it right, and I want to do it right, but I also don't want to be like Minhaj, right? Like I don't want to hit the H too hard. Yeah, because I think that's not great either.
I think you brought a good point too, that it's taking a lot of time, but I think sometimes it's just worth doing. Once you do it, you don't get any better at it until you've done it. Yeah, and then once you've done it, some things just like, it's like making these videos. Now we can make these videos in very much the same time that it takes to watch the video. There's very little extra now.
Yeah, there's, finding the questions beforehand, but we like reading through comments anyway, so those sort of come up naturally. Right. And then there's writing the stuff out in between, and you do a lot of the sort of little notes about stuff that you want to talk about. Do you want to talk about how long that takes for a video?
Because I'm old and I forget stuff. So it maybe takes me I don't know, like for every video that we've done, like the Q&A, I think.
Yeah.
I maybe take like 10 minutes to type out a few things.
Okay, so
Just that I want to, just ideas, like just points that I want to get. And sometimes if it's just flowing anyways, because I'm, after playing years of online Boggle,
yeah,
I can type about 80 words per minute.
which is pretty fast.
So it's not awful. It's like it almost comes out as fast as I can think of the ideas, and that way when I type it out, I don't have to remember everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got that 10 minutes. We've got the finding comments, which is a sort of nebulous amount of time, but it's what we do anyways. That probably isn't more than 20 minutes, I would say.
Right.
Just for how quick it is to skim through comments as they come up, right?
Right.
And then there's the actual recording of the video, and then the editing process is actually also pretty painless. Probably another 15 minutes.
Well, and
then
the 15 minutes is not intended. I guess the 15 minutes, if you're going to put it, it's going to be the uploading.
Yeah.
And adding all the notes and stuff and the links.
So yeah, it takes maybe, what, I want to say like 3 minutes per minute of content you see here. Maybe 4 if you...
I think closer to 3.
I'm trying to include both of our time here because it's 2 minutes, 2 minutes per minute. So it's maybe
okay. So 3 minutes is probably true. That's probably
true. Yeah. So it's about 3 minutes per minute of content you see here.
Yeah. If it was more than that, I don't think we'd be able to do this.
Yeah, and that's including both of our time separately. That's not including the 50 minutes of recording.
And I won't count the footage because I'd be doing that anyway. I still like Injustice. We both still be doing that, I think.
Okay. So yeah, so technically like 4 minutes, but functionally less. But yeah, so that's sort of the difference is that I'm not trying to make a great video essay. The first time around, I know it's going to be rough. I'm expressing an opinion which I think is valuable and worth saying, and I am trying to make it something that I can be happy with and something that I would be interested in watching, and that's why I ran it past. I ran both the script as I have it now and the amount that I've recorded so far past one of my friends who really does like video essays and who listens to a bunch, right, and sort of has the chops for it, and I've ran it past another friend too, and I want to make this something that I think is interesting and worth watching. And even though I know that comparing it to the people who do this, right, it's going to be rough around the edges.
Well, sure, but they've been doing it for a while. What you see is after years of practice, right?
Yeah. But I think it's shaping up. I'm pretty happy with it. I guess anybody who's watched the sort of 27 minutes in here, if probably is a lot like the comments that we received who talk about they watch us because they like our opinions, the way that we talk, and how we are often thoughtful. Hopefully, it's going to have all of those sensibilities in it in the finished product. I am really sort of making my best effort, and this is actually a more sort of structured argument and opinion. So if you're hearing this, I think my goal right now, I don't want to put a date on it because I'm going to put it out when it's done, but sometime over Christmas break, my last final exam is on December 19th, and in between that and sometime really early January, when I go back to school, I'm going to have some time off, and I think that is when I'm going to be trying to really grind out this essay. So hopefully sometime over Christmas break, maybe a little Christmas present to the viewers and also to myself.
All right.
Post it. That's the plan right now.
Thumbs up.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
So there we go. Our next question comes from Dr. Zoidberg, and they say, recently came back to this game and my discount gold pack is not available in my shop.
With a question mark at the end. So that actually is a question, even though it's punctuated like a question, but not formulated like a question.
But it is sort of, there is an implied question there. So I guess if I wanted to read it in the correct cadence, it would be, recently came back to this game and my discount gold pack is not available in my shop.
Yeah. So the big change was that the rotating packs became only for money in addition to the discount gold packs. So there used to be some Target team packs that, we all liked.
Yeah. And at pretty much the same time, they took those out. Now it's only for money. There's no credit packs for those like team packs and rotating packs. And at the same time, pretty much, they took the daily discounted gold pack out of the store.
And despite this, I think the gold pack is still a good way to build up a farming roster.
Yeah.
The problem is, it may not be so obvious that because the price separation between the challenge pack is not as big. It's 150K, and the gold pack is 100. Before, the discount pack was 75. So it used to be for half the price you get a character. Instead, it's like 2/3 the price. And some would argue that the challenge pack is a better deal because you get higher stat cards with better passives on average.
Yeah. But it depends on what you're actually looking for from it. If you're just looking for sort of the highest number of stat points per credit spent, then the challenge pack is probably better. But it matters how those, stats are arranged, right?
Right.
And with a gold pack, you have a lower number of characters, and you have people who, not always, but the vast majority of them are available for purchase in the store.
Right. So there's so many challenge cards. It's hard to promote them through the pack.
Yeah.
And the gold pack, if you decide that there's one character that you've gotten a few now, you want to just finish it up and make them high enough to farm a bonus battle 6, which ties into the earlier question nicely. You can just directly promote them, and it'll cost you a little bit more, but you actually have that choice.
Yeah. And I think the difference is if you're getting like your first, gold character, the difference between challenge and gold is not worth the extra 50,000 credits, because the amount of time it takes you to grind at that stage matters a lot.
Yeah.
When you're sort of at that in-between phase where when you're getting more gold characters, you're probably not getting secondary copies of them anyways.
Right.
That is the time I think where it might make sense to get challenge characters, because if you're only going to be able to consistently get one copy anyways, it makes sense for that person to have higher stats, so you can max them out. And then when you move out of that phase again, where having one copy of a character doesn't cut it and you're going to need to start eliteing them, that is when it makes more sense again to go back to the golds, or to take the golds you already have and promote them directly in the store. So I think there is sort of a point right in the middle where it might make sense to use the challenge pack, but it's, I think, a pretty narrow one.
Now I'm going to make a maybe not so obvious point, that the cards you farm with may not be the cards you want to play in multiplayer. And that's important because you cannot remove promotions. Once you promoted them, you can't bring them back down. So be careful about how high the elite level you take somebody, if you're going to be using the farm, especially if you're just relying on the promotion and not the gear, which most people are at the beginning, because gear takes a long time to max out. And if you're using that to get to bonus battle 6 to grind or to finish the offline mode, you don't want to get stuck with a character that you like at too high a promotion, so that you can't take them in multiplayer, because you always lose with them because you don't have enough of the augmentations or the gear to make them effective against the kind of teams that you'll be facing with the matchmaking that you have.
Yeah. So there we go. Our next question comes from Yazan Omar, and then there's a follow-up that is also relevant. So, do you get banned if you use metal characters in online battle with Elite 7? And then the follow-up is a reply from Shem the Kid, spelled KYD, and they say, nope, there was enough Phantom Zone appearances to max out all the metal characters normally, so they wouldn't ban you.
So, I'm not sure. Like, sometimes when people say things, it's obvious that they mean exactly what they say, and I think there's a chance that we're talking about two different things. So getting to Elite 7 and maxing out specials are two different things. Getting to Elite 7, I think, in my mind, the amount of money you'd actually have to spend to get there means that if the developers still cared, it would be a bannable offense. But I think a lot of the reasons why people aren't getting their accounts suspended now is because
moderation is lax.
Right, they're not paying attention. However, the issue of maxing out the specials is a different one, because so if we look at Elite 7, we're talking 20-something copies of the cards, versus the rate-limiting step of specials is the Valorium alloy. Yeah,
and so 20-something copies of the cards, we're talking about getting them from the Phantom Zone packs themselves.
The Nth Metal packs,
The Nth Metal packs, and the Phantom Zone Crystal rewards, right?
Right.
So, theoretically, I think even if you've been playing all of them, I'm not even entirely sure that maybe with the reset glitch, right, and using the cheapest pack and, resetting it until you get it, that there might be like a perfect way to get a full team maxed out.
But I think if you look at the terms and conditions, or the terms of service, or whatever you call it, that even glitching to reset the pack would be considered enough cheating to justify a suspension of your account.
Yeah, so, well, in that case, I think there's like a 1 in however many million or billion or trillion chance that if you just opened all the packs and got that lucky, that you could theoretically have them maxed out. But I think for any sort of actual real world situation, you probably couldn't even have them, Elite 7.
So as far as the Valorium alloy, though, there has been enough, because of one account that we've kept where we've only played the Phantom Zone based on the 50 Nth Metal replays. There has been enough Phantom Zone events to max out the specials and the passive for 2 medals, and we're probably a handful of Phantom Zone events away from getting E43.
Yeah.
Because we've got 80,000 something Valorium alloy on one account, and it takes 35,000 to max out the specials, both the regular specials and the dark power specials and the passive of one metal character.
Yeah.
And maybe on a side note, so we've got one other team that's waiting for a video, but we've got another idea now because we've finally brought Batman Ninja Catwoman to Elite 3, which allows us to evolve the passive, and that means her passive lasts 21 seconds per tag in or knockout or special 2.
Mm-hmm.
And it should be a really fun demo because I think hands down she is absolutely the best metal card.
Mm-hmm. That's not controversial, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So it was definitely worth the resources, but I think we should be doing that sometime soon-ish.
Yeah, so there we go. Our next question comes from Faded World, and they say, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I have this major issue where in the Phantom Zone challenges I cannot complete the Power Steel and Health Steel challenges. Using any Raven cards does nothing, and using Gear cards does something but very inconsistently. So for example, I got Power Steel challenge with 2 times bonus using Batgirl, so I used Time Capsule and League of Assassins gear with her, but even after 4 times activating the Power Steel, there is 0 progress of the challenge. However, after the 5th time, the bar moves slightly ahead, meaning that it does work but not completely. So is it a glitch or what? What am I missing?
So the easy question is Health Steal is... I find that the best way to do Health Steal and the fastest way is to put LexCorp chestplate on my Special 2 Specialist.
Yeah.
In this case, it's Deathstroke. And funny note, Deathstroke, despite doing a huge amount of damage on Special 2, is not nearly as good as another character would be because Deathstroke has the Pirate Crew, and some of the damage is not credited to him. It's credited to his teammates. So that I think the Aquaman hit and the Batman hit do more damage, and if you had it on, say, our Justice League team with New 52 Wonder Woman, she would be able to get through Health Steal using LexCorp chestplate in 1 round, and it often takes Deathstroke 2 because a lot of the credit for the health being knocked off them is not credited to them. The harder part is the Power Steal. So Power Steal is one of those crap kind of tasks that take forever to do even if you're geared properly for it. And I'll tell you what, Necron's Scythe actually works really well, but being able to drop somebody to less than 15% and do enough hits to steal their power, it's not worth it. But it does consistently sort of meet the requirement without actually doing it efficiently enough to finish the task before we've done enough to just get the full points to finish our crystal anyways.
Yeah.
So, all right, so I've been meaning to do a video about Phantom Zone strategy, and the principles are there. I haven't gotten around to doing it, and I did make a post on Reddit when somebody was asking about this, so it might be worth mentioning a few parts of it.
Yeah.
You think? Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so and you're seeing it demonstrated in this video where we're doing the last 3 crystals of the Phantom Zone. The most important thing when you're doing Phantom Zone, and I guess this is 3 runs, it's about 1 hour, and with the intent of not necessarily getting through it sort of quickly, but making a few sort of mental mistakes because it's not really like a totally focused. So on average, you can do 20 minutes. If you're really efficient, maybe, or lucky, you can do it in a little bit less.
Yeah.
Recognize which tasks are the fastest to do, and then tailor your team to be able to do those specific tasks. So you'll notice that we typically don't start a crystal run until we have at least 2 and preferably 3 of the 4 tasks being the fastest ones.
Mm-hmm.
The fastest ones, it's funny because they were the who asked this question? Faded World was saying that the Steel Health was the hardest. That's actually one of the fastest ones. With our Flashpoint team, basic damage, Steel Health, and 10 online wins are the best. Since we're always doing multiplayer online, we always do ultimates.
Yeah.
Because once you get past the first fight, the bonuses are so much better. You can Steel Health, that's worth 135 in 1 or 2 fights. 10 online wins can be done in 3 fights if you start from the first one, and 2, I think, if you start after that.
Yeah.
And that's worth 270. And basic damage is the best because it can always be done in 1, even if it's the first fight.
Yeah.
And then there's some that are sort of garbage tasks where it's worth re-rolling. And usually in a Phantom Zone run, I think there's the free one you always take when you think that you're stuck, like you're not making progress enough with the fights that you're doing. And I don't re-roll them just because they're there. I re-roll them because there's not another good one that makes it worth fighting.
Yeah.
So the crap ones are, and that either take forever or just really undoable, is the doing 235 combo enders. That takes forever. Steel power, 80 supers, and no matter what the team, those are all hard. And 80 stuns might be easier with, say, an Earth 2 team, where they stun and tag in. But that would mean trading out our team, changing the gears. And this team is just too fast for all the other tasks to make it worth trying to tailor another team for that. And then I think every other task to me is in between. For example, the tagging or block requirement. So if it's one of the tasks, we just leave it in the list. And then, like, this is an example, right? So we're watching this. Harley Quinn is weak. We just tag in and out. We block as we need to. And then you can often finish this in one fight. You wait for a low damage opponent, and then you can take care of it in a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, though, we didn't tag in enough. But see, that was maybe a quarter of what was necessary. Damage over time effects, or the total damage over time damage, that we let Aquaman do the fight, do special ones until his health is low, and then tag him out, and then finish the fight, and then we see what we've got left. And the specials, the number 195 specials, and the amount of crit damage, I mean, they sort of take care of themselves just over the course of the fights.
For sure.
And we don't have to worry about them. I mean, honestly, it would take too long to switch teams, so we just optimize our Flashpoint team. We know what's needed, and we just motor through it.
So there we go. That's that. The next question comes from Ari and Joshi, and they say, could you please tell me how do I get amazing gear and how to use them quickly? I always find that I'm lacking shards. I'm a new watcher of your videos and love them. Keep making them.
All right, thank you. And the right answer that's not that useful is it depends on how much time you have to play. With good gear, I mean, you need the first copy, so that means playing Survivor and getting lucky, and playing multiplayer seasons and getting in the top 5% to get at least the first copy.
Yeah, or getting them from gear lockers.
Well, except that the best gears, I would argue, are the legendary gears, with a few exceptions. I guess
that's true. I mean, if you're just starting out, though, getting the lower star gears and actually fusing them up gets you in the long run.
So that's the other part, right? You get shards.
Yeah.
So power credits are important for the gear lockers. Gear lockers are important because you will get the common gears, and you can get more copies of them, and you can max them out more easily. And once you max them out, they give you more shards when you shatter them.
Yeah.
So some people might argue that doing Survivor is a good way. It is for the first copy, but in terms of just maxing out the number of shards you get, I think the power credits and then gear lockers is probably the best, as long as you're willing to put in the time and you're playing long term.
Yeah.
Because that's the best way, right? Like,
yeah, that's the key, I think, is the term quickly here. Is it really depends on what you mean by quickly. Because it's quickly relative to, I guess, not really sort of directing your attention towards gears. But it's not quickly in terms of what most people's idea of quickly is in a game. Right? The number of hours that we're talking about here.
Right. So now, was that our last question? I think it was.
It was.
All right, so can I...
Not through all of them. It took us 43 minutes. That's pretty good.
So can I wanted to talk something about language, because it's relevant here when we were talking about the difference between videos that are geared towards kids and videos that are attractive to kids. And why that subtle difference in language makes such a huge difference.
I actually have an interesting point that I learned about literally, I think, just today or yesterday in a podcast that I was listening to. So I recently listened to, this is a plug, I don't know if I made that on this podcast before, but a huge plug to somebody who is way larger than us, and our audience is not going to sort of translate over into anything for them. But Behind the Bastards is a absolutely wonderful podcast. Robert Evans runs it. It's really cool. It's super fascinating. I've learned a lot about history.
So what's the conceit behind it?
The conceit is that every week and there is a new episode every week, and sometimes they're multi-part, so like it's usually at least an hour of content every week, which is great. Robert Evans goes through the history of monsters. Some of history's greatest monsters is basically
not literal
premise.
monsters.
Yeah.
But like monstrous human beings.
So people that you could justifiably call bastards.
Okay.
And he just goes through stuff, and generally the more in the public eye they are, or the more people would know about them, like Hitler, Stalin, who's other people they've covered. Some of their names are escaping me right now, but he will cover sort of the stuff that people don't know. Right. And then for people who are, or people, events, stuff that is a little bit less sort of in the public eye, he'll talk about sort of everything about it from start to finish.
Right.
So for Stalin, Stalin, you hear about his drinking problems, and for the oh my god, I'm losing names right now, but for somebody else, you might hear their full stories.
That makes sense, because what they're trying to do is cover stuff that's maybe not common knowledge, whether it's about the person themselves or just features about people who happen to be famous.
Yeah, you're trying to give them, you're trying to make it new information either way.
Right.
And so there's his most recent episode is about 8chan and the current owner of 8chan, with the special guest being the founder of 8chan, who now wants it to be not supported. And in it, they said something really interesting about 4chan, where the founder of 8chan said, I think that the founder of 4chan has a lot, with very little sort of effort, can have a lot of influence over the way a discourse is had, right? So there's a board called Poll, which for people who know 4chan, super,
So it's their political branch, like sort of that area where they go politics.
But it's pretty hateful and vitriolic.
Okay.
I think it's fair to say. There's been a lot of, really negative stuff that has spawned from Poll. And the founder of 8chan was talking about it, where he said, so Poll doesn't stand for politics, it stands for politically incorrect. Right, that's what the board is, and just framing it in that way, right? Saying that this is, this is a politically incorrect space. He thinks in a lot of ways has sort of shaped what it has become,
right?
Because it sort of sets a precedent for the kind of discussion that's meant to be happening there, and to a certain extent, I think because of the way that 4chan was, it would have become what it did in some form or another. But I think that definitely does have an influence and an impact, right?
Well, maybe that was like a section of 4chan that had a bit of accelerant, right?
Yeah.
So instead of just letting it sort of like a forest fire build up on its own, you throw a little bit of gas there.
Yeah, and also in the episode, again, I don't know actually that much about 4chan myself, so I can't really confirm or deny this. But apparently, Poll was made in a way as almost like a quarantine, where there are specifically laxer rules for what you can and can't post.
Right.
In Poll. So it's one of the spaces in which you have a bunch of people who end up flocking to it for that sort of lax
is it like the
rules.
What's that movie, The Purge? Or is it the one where, one day
where
a
all
year...
crime is legal? That is The Purge, yeah.
Okay, so it's like that, where you're just letting it happen that day and then just let it go.
It's more like, not The Purge, there's an area in America which technically doesn't fall under any jurisdiction where theoretically murder would be legal or any crime would be legal if committed in it. I forget what it's called. But you can look it up. It's like an area in like a forest somewhere, like a national park. And so people have talked about it at length, and it turns out crimes are legal in that space. Nobody's ever been prosecuted, but there'd be a lot of loopholes. Like, you can't bring somebody there for the purposes of murder, because then it's premeditated, and you could be prosecuted for the premeditation somewhere else. So if you ended up in there, realized you were there, and said, oh, cool, and then killed somebody while you were there, theoretically you would not be committing any crimes.
Okay, that's interesting.
I don't remember what it specifically is, but it is. I know it's an area of forest in which technically crime is legal.
Okay.
So there we go. It's more like that,
go there.
where it's a physical space and not like a designated time slot.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, let's not visit there. I have no plans on murdering anybody if I was there, but if I, once you pop in there, you're not allowed to. For legal reasons, I have to say that if I found myself in there with somebody I wanted to murder, I was not planning on doing it beforehand.
Okay. So that was a turn I did not expect to take.
So that's sort of the discussion of discourse, and how it can be, the type of discourse that's being had can be changed, I think.
Right.
Or influenced relatively easily. So what was your thing?
I was going more along lines of I mean, it sort of dovetails, but it's a different idea that more just the word choice that we make can have a huge influence on the direction the discussion goes. And all right, so there's this thing called the narcissist prayer, and I think I couldn't find an attribution for it, so I just read it first and then maybe be a little bit more clear about some of what it means. So it starts off, that didn't happen, and if it did, wasn't that bad, and if it was, that's not a big deal, and if it is, it's not my fault, and if it was, I didn't mean it, and if I did, you deserved it. And I guess what's implied is really, if it's not obvious, because I think when hearing it, it's a little different than reading it. So that didn't happen, and if it did happen, it wasn't that bad. And if it was that bad, that's not a big deal. And if it is a big deal, that's not my fault. And if it was my fault, I didn't mean it. And if I did mean it, you deserved it. And what made me think of that, I mean, what's been a really fertile ground for a lot of our discussion in the last couple of years has been the U.S. government and the current president. And the most recent thing is the whole Ukraine impeachment inquiry.
Yeah.
And when I talk about words, the term quid pro quo was started as a talking point by Republican politicians, basically to say, when the idea of the Ukraine, the whistleblower about the Ukraine scandal came out, they said, well, in this conversation, there was no quid pro quo. They were the ones that started talking about like that. It wasn't there, no quid pro quo.
Yeah.
And so quid pro quo describes trading one thing of value for something else of value.
Yeah.
And it's kind of clever of them to pick this as their starting point, because if they say, Trump didn't do this quid pro quo, trading something of value for something else of value, then the answer, if they can sort of cultivate the conversation, is to bring it towards people responding and saying, but there was quid pro quo.
Yeah, which is not... That framing, even if you say there was quid pro quo, doesn't actually sound that awful.
Right.
What it represents, the idea that they're having quid pro quo represent, is much worse.
Right. So it's part of, to me, it's following the structure of the narcissist prayer, where they're saying, oh, that didn't happen. Then if somebody says that did happen, what you've done is the people who disagree with you, you've convinced them to use your language. At the stage where they start saying, hey, wait a minute, some of that fancy Latin quid pro quo stuff did happen, you're all ready to say, well, it wasn't that bad. It's not a big deal. You've already taken
quid pro quo.
You're ready to get to the next stage of the narcissist prayer. And, I mean, yeah, because you're just trading stuff, right? It's just quid pro quo. So the problem is, it's taken a few weeks, and we're finally seeing a shift now that people are starting to call it for what it is. I mean, if you're going to be generous, it's bribery. And if you're going to be ungenerous, it's extortion. Because what you're doing is, so you've got this ally who's supposed to stand up against Russia for you. You've promised them, and your government has already promised $400 million, and they've allocated that money. And you're saying, nah, you're not going to get it unless you do this thing for me.
Yeah.
And if this is crucial to your functioning, at least in the functioning in the way of protecting yourself and protecting maybe other countries against Russia, by keeping Russia from establishing, I guess, more power, then you're either bribing them and saying, okay, so here's 400 million if you do this for us, or you're extorting if you say, yeah, this stuff that you thought you were getting, you're not getting it unless you do this for us.
Yeah, it reminds me of like a bad friend or like a bad partner where they feel like they are owed something when they are giving you a gift freely given, and that is based off of, all the sort of context, right? Or they go, well, I'm getting this thing for you, so why can't you just do this for me, right? Except most of the time they actually give you the money first, right? They give you the thing of value and they use it after the fact, and it's even worse to say, I will do this for you.
And people
but,
but people are willing to call that emotional blackmail.
Yeah.
So see, at the level where you start off saying, this is what it is, he never did this. He never did this quid pro quo. If they start off by saying, well, he never did this extortion thing, he was never extorting anybody, he never bribed anybody, then the point says, well, he actually did bribe somebody, it's become so much harder to say, well, bribery's not such a big deal.
Yeah.
Because there's already that emotional attachment, or not emotional attachment, the connotation of the word. So, I mean, you could argue whether the U.S. should be sending $400 million to help Ukraine fight Russia.
Yeah.
The same way you could argue whether the U.S. should have been helping the Kurds fight ISIS, although in Canada we call them Daesh, because ISIS is, here's another thing where words are
Using
important.
their terms.
Yeah, ISIS is using their terms. You're calling them what they want to be called. Daesh is what they are, and they're known as, but it's not the term they choose for themselves.
Yeah.
It's accurate, but I think...
It's like boomer now. Except, it's if you were to take how the boomers are talking about it, it's an exact equivalency. And if you were to take how it actually is, it is nowhere near an equivalency. It's maybe adding some extra import to the act of calling somebody a boomer than it deserves, but there are some similarities.
But this is why I think a lot of that stuff where people argue about the choice of words and saying words aren't important is really a bad faith argument, because I think words are important, and the way people choose them and stick to them and fight for them demonstrates, even if they're willing to say, well, it's not a big deal, don't be such a snowflake, like that kind of stuff is really disingenuous and dishonest.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Yeah, so if you're going to argue that the U.S. shouldn't be sending money to Ukraine to begin with. But what you can argue is that if you suddenly withdraw help, that you aren't screwing somebody over. And again, Ukraine, the Kurds, I think they have parallels there. They're not the exact same situation, but there's parallels there in terms of why it's something really bad to do. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's what I want to say, just because it's in the news so much and the impeachment inquiry is going on. And even as a Canadian, where I don't really have the same kind of direct personal stake in it, it's really kind of compelling, and it amazes me that people are able to get away with this kind of bad behavior for so long.
Yeah, it seems almost like a farce, and I know I haven't looked into the what's going on enough for me to be able to comment in any meaningful way. And I know that people tend to be very heavily biased towards, the things that they already believe, so I need to be careful that when I'm looking at stuff, I am not just sort of making the assumption that I am right, and that everybody else is ridiculous. But I gotta say, some people really do seem like they're ridiculous, right?
It's true.
Like I need to preface it that way, because I know a lot of people are like, if you disagree with me, your opinions are ridiculous, and I know there's people on every side. There's people, regardless of what you believe in, that are saying that about everybody else. And I'm not trying to say that I'm saying that about everybody, but I think there is a definite subset of people who are in positions of real significant power who I look at the things that they're doing and I go, wow, you're ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't need to name any specific names other than, obviously Trump. That's not controversial. And then I think Ted Cruz is fair to lump into it. The problem is, every time I think of Ted Cruz, I can't help but think about that butter tweet. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up Ted Cruz cow butter tweet, which is one of the most. I don't want to exaggerate for comedic effect here, but it's one of the funniest tweets I've ever seen on Twitter. It's just ridiculous.
But didn't Trump accuse, during the primaries, Cruz or Cruz's family, father, of being a murderer, and talk about, make really disparaging remarks about Ted Cruz's wife?
I don't even remember. But what I do remember, and I'm going to read for you now, is I've looked up the Ted Cruz butter tweet. And for context, the picture is a picture of Ted Cruz doing what I think you would generously describe as smiling. Yeah. It's, he looks the way Ted Cruz looks when he smiles, which is to say, not great. And he's standing in front of a cow made of butter. Mm-hmm. And the tweet reads as follows. This is from the official Ted Cruz Twitter account. Wow, a cow made of butter. My girls would love it. In fact, the first sentence Carolyn ever said was, I like butter. And I think about this tweet a lot.
Do you?
And I really do. I don't know how to feel about it. But just having a child who you have raised in a way in which the first sentence they ever say is, I like butter. I don't know. I feel like it says something about a person, and the fact that the fact that it's Ted Cruz is somehow entirely unsurprising to me, and I don't know exactly why, but
it's not I love dad, I love mom, I like butter.
It's your first word is probably still dad or mom, but your first sentence is I like butter, and I don't know what it means, but it's not good. And again, the fact that it was Ted Cruz's parenting that led to it is somehow entirely unsurprising to me. Even though the fact that anybody's first sentence could be that period is surprising. Hearing that and knowing that it's instantly attributed to Ted Cruz in some way makes a lot of sense.
Okay. I think that's a good place to end.
Okay.
And we've run out of footage. We've just won our last fight. We'll get to see what the last crystal gets.
Yeah.
And so we'll wrap it up by thanking our patrons on Patreon who have been supporting us, specifically Consul Peasant supporting us at the highest tier, Last Word, Shawn, Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Mull, and Michael DeVries supporting us on the credited level, and Eddie G and Chris Wolf at the gratitude level.
So thanks so much for your support, and thanks so much to all of you for watching or listening. We'll see you next time. Komoda!